Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight we're experiencing a little bit of some technical difficulties. Unfortunately, Chad he has to do some maintenance to his computer, so he's going to be joining us via phone for a part of the show until he gets his computer up and running. So, Chad, are you there, buddy? The one and only. Good. A little tired, but good. Busy lifestyle. Yeah, I'll bring that up. You can get in touch with us at our website at www.explorersgroup.com. We're on Twitter at explorersgroup. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/Explorers Group. We're also on iTunes, Instagram, all at Explorers Group. Hi, Alicia. How you doing? You joined into a messed up show tonight, unfortunately. Yeah, so that's where you could reach us. That's about it for that. Hey, Gary. It's the curse of the Bigfoot, yeah. Go ahead, buddy. Yeah, we stepped away from that for a little bit. Mhm. Right, right. Here, I'll bring a picture of that up here quick. There we go. Chad, I'm sure you can't see it, but it's on screen. Yeah, no, it's there. Yeah, we always get the strange stories sent to us. Sometimes they're good and pertinent and kind of go along with what we usually cover and talk about, and sometimes it's just ridiculous stuff. But this one was actually kind of interesting. And Chad, if you don't mind, I have kind of a breakdown of what the story, what the write up on the story is. So if you don't mind, I'll just kind of read it verbatim off of the New York Post. Uh, so on the New York Post.com, the story. This is the story we're going to be reading about. A mysterious wolf-like creature was shot dead by a rancher in rural Montana, and even wildlife officials have no clue what the thing is. Authorities said Friday. The beast had oddly long fur, oversized claws, and an extra-large head, but its ears are too big and its legs are too short to be a common wolf or dog, according to Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks officials. We will have no idea what this is until we get a DNA report back. Excuse me. The strange discovery was made on May 16th by a man who shot the canine because it tried to chow down on some of his livestock in the tiny town of Denton, officials said in a press release. The rancher called the authorities to report that he had killed a wolf, but authorities soon learned it was something stranger. The critter's canine teeth or front paws were too short to be a wolf, and its big floppy ears and shaggy fur were nothing like a common canine, officials said. True believers took on Twitter to howl over what the Franken-dog could be. Theories include a dire wolf, an extinct saber-toothed canine that once roamed North America, and even a real-life werewolf. We hope they used a silver bullet, but hate to be there when it woke up. One person had tweeted. So basically referencing the weapons in folklore and how to kill a werewolf. So that's basically the report. I mean, they didn't have any DNA yet that they could verify what the creature is, but based off of the images, and I had seen a video on it as well, to me, it just looks like a wolf. I mean, it looks a little malnourished and whatnot, but I don't know. Looks like a wolf, maybe a wolf-dog hybrid or something. I don't know. It doesn't look really all that out of the ordinary to me, but I don't know. I don't see the thing up close. I'm not right next to it to get a better idea, but based off of the pictures I've seen, it looks like a wolf. I mean, the muzzle's a little more thick, a little more broad, but and I guess based off some of the other write-ups, it had other things that didn't coincide with your typical wolf. But all in all, to me, it just looks like a wolf dog or a wolf. Chad? Mm-hmm. 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 Right, right. Mm-hmm. Right, right. Yeah, well, we'll try to keep everybody up to date with any kind of DNA results that come out. If we even do hear about it, it could very well be one of those stories that just fall to the wayside because hey, it's kind of strange. We're waiting on DNA, and then that's all you hear about that. But if we do hear anything, we'll let everybody know. So anyway. This could be a good thing to talk to Linda Godfrey about as well. So we did hear say, you guys aren't hearing Chad. So for some reason, Chad is not coming through. Can you hear him now? Anybody can you confirm that you hear Chad? Okay, for anybody just tuning in, unfortunately, Chad's computer is having some issues, and I have him on the phone, and I was hoping he could be heard, but apparently he's not coming through. I don't know why. Nope. Cleo says she can't hear you. I don't know. Hold on one sec. All right, say something now. Can anybody hear him? Keep talking. Mm-hmm. Hmm. Are you there? I don't know. Nothing's coming through. Everybody's saying that they can't hear you, buddy. I don't know. I don't know why. We've had everybody call into the phone that we've interviewed before. What do you? How? What percent are you at? Hmm. All right, bear with us for a minute, ladies and gentlemen. Chad's trying to get his computer up and running. Hopefully, let me get this dead dog off the screen. Anyway, hopefully he gets up and running soon. So I'm just going to go ahead and no, it doesn't matter if he hangs up and calls in again, Christine. We're waiting for his computer to reboot. Once that happens, he's going to log in and we'll do the video chat like we usually do. So I do apologize. This was unexpected. His computer kind of took a shit on him right before the show started. And he's trying to get everything up and running. So again, I do apologize, but that was the oddity of the week, and it was quite odd, I can imagine, for everybody listening in when you could only hear me talking to somebody that you couldn't hear. He was on the phone, and usually we have our guests call into my phone, and they're able to be heard, and I don't know why it's not working tonight. But anyways, the main topic that we're going to be talking about tonight is personal paranormal stories. And we're dubbing this Part 3 because we've talked about a house that Chad and I had lived in when we were in college, and his family owns it, which now I think he owns it. And a lot of weird things had happened in there. Then paranormal stories. Part 2 was we were talking about Rest Haven Nursing Home. So that was a nursing home in Schuylkill County, Pennsylvania, in Schuylkill Haven, Pennsylvania, actually. Yeah, the joys of technology. You got it, Yvonne. I tell you what, it's horrible. So that's what we were talking about in personal paranormal stories or experiences. That was Part 2, and this is Part 3, where we're basically just going to talk about experiences he and I had throughout our lives, growing up and whatnot. So we'll see how it goes. Hopefully, now you all can't hear him, but I can. Chat, how is it coming so far? Oh, boy. All right, so I don't know when Chad is going to be able to come in and join us on tonight's show. So I guess I'll start it out. Basically, I guess I'll start from the beginning. I grew up in a town called Orwigsburg, Pennsylvania. And to give a little bit of history of that town, it was, I believe, the first state seat in Pennsylvania, and the only other close big towns to it was Allentown, which to drive there from Orwigsburg is about a 40-minute drive. So in the early days of Orwigsburg settlement, I would there were a lot of battles, I guess, if you will, or confrontations, we'll say, with the Native Americans that originally settled that land. And as the white settlers started moving in and taking over lands and developing the town, there were conflicts. Sorry, I got a message. I was reading that. And a lot of the battles were bloody, and a lot of them, lives were lost on both sides. So my theory, as we get into this story, is there was a confrontation between some of the settlers and one of the, or maybe several of the Native Americans, but one in particular, I believe, was killed on the site where my childhood home was built. And why I say that is, before the house was built, I believe it was an area where people would just kind of discard bottles and maybe garbage. I don't know, because when we would dig in our backyard, we would find old glass bottles from the 1800s and just all kinds of weird stuff. And it was all throughout the area where my house was built and surrounding houses. But before that, we think it was part of either native land or a small expanse of land between the new settling town and the native land. When our house was a new build back in the late 70s, when my parents had bought it, it was a half a double, and it was a row of, I believe, 3 or 4 half a doubles on the street. And when my parents first moved in, their room was the room in the back of the house. It was the largest room on the second floor. And when they would go to sleep, every night around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, my dad was the first one to start noticing this. He would wake up, or something like he would just feel the urge to have to wake up. He would wake up around that time, and in the corner of the bedroom, in the back wall, there were 2 windows, and the headboard was against the far wall facing those windows. And in the corner of the one window and the closet that was off to the right of it, he would see what he described as the head of a Native American. And it would just kind of float up and down, just kind of hovered in the corner of the room. And the details were very explicit. They were very, very vivid. You could see it was kind of like an older man, weathered face, wrinkled. The hair came down on both sides in braids, had a headband, a few feathers in the back. And it just kind of floated up and down in the corner of the room with a very, very sad look on its face. And where the neck would be, it just kind of dissolved, kind of in, like, just kind of mist. And it had kind of from what he told us and what we saw, was kind of a greenish yellow glow to it. I know it sounds hokey, but it is what it is. Believe me or not, you're entitled. So anyways, he would see this thing in the corner of the room, and it would float up and down, and he said he would just kind of give a little wave to it, and it would disappear. Well, my mom also saw it, same time, same description, same spot in the room. Now, my mom was always a huge fan of Stephen King novels. And my mom always loved horror movies and spooky things. And she would see this. And she never wanted to tell my dad, because they were fairly newlyweds, if you will. They had only been married for a few years. And she didn't want to tell my dad because she didn't want him thinking that she was a nut, or she was, only delusional because of the books she read and the movies she watched and whatnot. So she didn't want to open her mouth. Well, one day, while they were sitting at the dining room table eating breakfast, my dad just happened to tell her, and he's like, every night around 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, I would see what I could best describe as an Indian head floating in the corner of the room. Well, since he opened the door, my mom then said, "Oh my God, I'm so glad that you said that, because I've experienced the same thing as well." And so now that was, she's like, I didn't want to tell you because of, I think Chad is here. Hold on, ladies and gentlemen. There he is.
Good evening, everyone.
Can you all hear him? Can somebody write in the comments and let us know that you could hear Chad? For anybody listening or watching, before I go on with my story, just let us know that he's able to be seen and heard. Anyone at all? Well, and okay, there we go. Thank you, Christine, very much. Thank you. Okay, so we're up and back and ready to rock. So I apologize to everyone that had to sit and listen to me the whole first part of the show. Anyway, so my mom and dad were sitting down at breakfast. Welcome, Chad, first of all. I'm glad you could make it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, right? Oh, God. It's usually me screwing up the show right away, Thank you, everybody, for letting us know that you can see and hear. I'm very much appreciated. Thanks, Gary. Thanks, Paul, Cindy, everybody. Anyway, so they were at the breakfast table, and they're talking about what they experienced, and, they kind of shrugged it off. And as time went on, my parents started having children, and I'm one of four. I have an older brother, a younger brother, and and the youngest is our sister. And when my older brother was 5 years old, he ended up going back into that room that was then converted into the kids' room, and my parents moved their room downstairs, and the other room that was upstairs was the nursery for all for the other me, I guess, at that time. So my older brother ended up staying in the new room. He was 5 years old. Around the same time, corner of the room, he saw the same exact thing. When I was 5, I moved into that room. Same time, same description. I saw it. I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it because I could still remember it very clearly, actually. My younger brother, when he was 5, he came in to that room as well. We the three of us shared a room. And he saw a head, but he said it looked more like a pirate's head, and he saw it under his bed. But I don't know. But point is, it was still a head. So maybe, I don't know, maybe a native lost his head and the settler lost his head. I don't know. But my sister never saw it because her room then, she stayed in the nursery. It became her bedroom then. But at the same time, every night in her room, it would get ridiculously hot, like uncomfortably hot, and nobody could ever figure out why. The heat wouldn't change, like nothing, but it would just get sweltering in that room. So that was one of many odd experiences that I had experienced in that house. And growing up, there were a lot of things that I couldn't explain, that I didn't understand. And I always, for some reason, had a fascination with Native American culture and just the people themselves. I loved the fact that they lived off the land and they weren't reliant on modern societal structure, I guess, if you will. And I don't know if it had anything to do with the entity or spirit that we had seen that kind of, I don't know, kind of brought on that like or interest. But I still, even today, I love Native American culture and whatnot. But anyway, some of the other things that had happened in that house, it was always a weird feeling, no matter where you were. And even my mom would say, like, the downstairs, the first level, which we had a rec room down there, we had a lot of we had a big rec room and all our toys, and then when we go down the hall, and then my parents' room was down there too, and there was a small bathroom, and then towards the front of the house was a laundry room and a garage. But if we would have left the toy downstairs, we'd ask our mom to go get it, and she'd always try to put on, a tough front and whatnot, because she didn't want us to be scared when we went down there. But she confessed later, as we got older, that she was terrified because she always felt like she was being watched, and she always felt when she was coming back up the steps like something would grab her. And we all shared that same sensation. Now, I also remember one time when I was probably 8, maybe 10 years old. I was left home alone. My parents ran to the store. My brothers and my sister, they were all at friends' houses and whatnot. And I was at home, and I was watching TV, and I had a Sheltie dog at the time. And I remember I was sitting watching TV, and he was the sweetest dog in the world. I don't think he ever barked, but he was lying on the floor in front of me. I was sitting on the sofa, and he looked back towards the back hallway, which led to our room. And he kind of growled, and the hair stood up in the back of his neck and everything, and he was kind of like scooching backwards and everything. And I'm kind of freaking out because I don't know what the hell is going on with him or what he's doing. And I don't know if anybody out there remembers My Pet Monster. It was this big blue Monzie, I think his name was. It was this big blue stuffed monster doll. There was a cartoon with it. I don't know. I loved the thing. But I was sitting and I was holding it on the sofa when I was watching TV. And I grabbed him and I held him really tight, and I'm freaking out. And I swear to you, I saw a man, not a native man, or like just, I guess, a white guy, older, blank expression on his face. He was dressed in a suit. And he just kind of hovered, like just floated from the back room, which was my brothers and I room. It floated down the hallway, and there was a piece of metal stripping that I guess held down the carpet where the two carpets met. And subconsciously, I always viewed that metal strip as the safe zone. If you were in front of it, you were safe. If you were behind it, it was where more of the paranormal activity happened. I don't know if it was true or not. It was just in my mind, because you never experienced anything in the front part of the house. But this being, this apparition, floated down the hall, and right when it got to that strip, it just kind of dissipated. It kind of started moving backwards, but it dissipated. It disappeared. And then my dog stopped growling, and I ran out on the front porch and hid in the corner of the deck waiting for my mom and dad to come home. But that was, like I said, that was one thing. There was a lot of other things that had happened. I remember one time I was in my room, and my younger brother and I shared a bunk bed. My older brother had a single bed, and between it was a desk that we would do our homework at. Yeah, Chad's here, Cleo. So we had a desk that we would do our homework on, and on the opposite side of the room, we had a TV and stuff that we would watch when we would fall asleep. And I was doing my homework, and I had the TV on behind me just as background noise, and the TV shut off. So I was like, all right, didn't think much of it. Turned around, grabbed the remote, turned it back on. Well, I go back and I start doing my homework and everything, and I had this feeling, this sensation that something was behind me, like the hair on the back of my neck was standing up and everything. And the TV went off again, and I turned around really fast, and I saw, because at the time it was the old cable boxes where there was the keypad or the number pad on top of the box that was like a mirror image of the remote. I don't know if it was Comcast or whoever it was at the time, probably way before Comcast. But anyways, I saw a person standing over top of the TV with their finger over the power button, and it was just a flash. It was there, and like I turned around, and like as soon as I was able to make out, like it was just gone. I remember the one time. Go ahead.
I said, "Wow."
Oh, yeah, yeah, and a lot of things seemed to happen in that room. I don't know why. And I could remember at night we had. Hold on. We had. There were 2 closets in that room, and one of them didn't have a door on it because we had a dresser in there and shelving and stuff like that. We had all of our toys and trophies and stuff that we had accumulated over the years. And yeah, I'd be mad too, Cleo. But the other closet had not accordion style, but it was like you would fold it out and the doors would fold into themselves. Mm-hmm. Well, one night I remember laying in bed, and I heard the doors creaking, and I looked down and I saw the closet doors open wide up. And what I couldn't understand is I shared a room with two brothers. Neither one of them ever experienced anything like I experienced. For some reason, it seemed to target me. I don't know why. And more things started to happen. And a lot of the activity was heavy when I was 5. And then it started to gain, it kind of went away, like it never went away, but it wasn't as active until I started going through puberty. And from what I had researched, paranormal activity seems to be heightened when you go through changes. Like when you're 5 years old, you start kindergarten or you start to go to school, you're away from home, you're around different people, you're in, I don't want to say it's traumatic, but it's different. It's a big change for a kid. Mm-hmm. So I think that's why we all kind of experienced that at around age 5. Then, you know, obviously when you're going through puberty, your body's changing, hormones, and, you know, things are going on that you're not familiar with. So that's a change. Traumatic events, near-death experiences, you know what I mean? Those kind of things trigger or are triggers to heighten paranormal activity, or so they say. So, like I was saying, as I was getting, you know, into puberty and whatnot, things started picking up again. And I remember the one night, my mom worked at Rest Haven Nursing Home, as we talked about at our one previous show. And she would come home. She usually worked 3 to 11. And when she would come home, a lot of times she would come back into our room and check on us just to, if, you know, see that we're okay, turn off the TV. Sometimes we'd fall asleep with the radio on, and that was on the one dresser between the beds. And, you know, she would come in, and if one of us was awake, you know, she'd tuck us in, give us a kiss goodnight and whatnot, and just, you know, say hi and goodnight. And I remember the one night I was actually on the top bunk this time, and we had the radio between us on a tall dresser, and it was very close to me. And I remember lying in bed, and I could see the bedroom door open up. I could see the light from the hall light reflecting on the walls in the bedroom. The door closed. I heard somebody walking into the room, and my mom is a small woman, so it's not like she was really heavy. But when you would walk through that house, the floor would kind of bounce, and you could hear things rattling on the dressers and whatnot. And I could hear the person walking, hear the things rattling, and walked alongside, because when you would walk into the room, it was a little bit of a hallway, and then it opened up into a big kind of rectangular room. And right when you would walk in, there was that little hallway, and the bunk bed was right there too. So this, what I thought was my mom, walked in, walked around the bed, walked in between the two beds, turned the radio down, and she put her hands up over the railing of the top bunk and kind of leaned in. And my mom used to wear a robe and stuff like that when she was getting ready for bed and everything. And I could see the robe. It had like the little frilly things that she had on the top, same hair and everything. But I leaned in to give her a kiss goodnight, but there was no face. It was like just black. There was nothing. And the fingers looked like dead, like dead skin. Like it was the freakiest freaking thing that ever happened to me. All I remember is I threw my head underneath the blankets and hid underneath the blankets. I started screaming, and then my mom actually came in, and I was like, "Why would you do that? Why'd you do that to me?" She's like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "Why did you trick me like that?" And she's like, "Honey, I didn't do anything. I wasn't even in here." And I said, "Well, you know, you were in here. And then finally, that was like the one thing that made my brothers kind of believe that I was experiencing these things, because they're like, "Well, Mom, something turned the radio down." So they actually heard it turn the radio down. They didn't see anything like I saw.
Well,
but
go ahead.
No, you go.
No, I was just going back to what you said about the staircase going downstairs at your old house there. That it was just a, to me it seemed like the staircase was out of place in the house, like where it sat and everything. It just always had it always had a weird, like, it just shouldn't be where it is.
Right.
And it always
Right.
kind of was like, the times that we'd go down through out through the garage and stuff, it was always like, yeah, I really don't like this staircase. I'd rather go outside and go down.
I know, because it was weird. The staircase was kind of located in the middle of the first or the second level of the house, and it went down, and the hallway went to the left of it, where normally the staircases would be off to the side or along a wall or something like that. But this one was just in the middle of the house and just went straight. It was odd, and it wasn't until go ahead.
It was like in the middle of a hallway too.
Yeah. Because
Like,
the kitchen was off to the right of it, the kitchen wall.
Yeah, one side was the hallway to go back to your room and Jenny's room.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was a bathroom back there, right?
Yeah, in between the bedrooms. Yeah, it was the bathroom.
And like it was like a hallway, and it was like if you didn't pay attention to where you were going, you would be going down the steps before you knew it.
Yeah. But it wasn't until many years later that the house was actually struck by lightning, and they remodeled it. My mom had the stairs moved so they would go down along the wall. So then the layout of the house made more sense at that point. But then it was still like at the end of the hall was my old room and the bathroom, my sister's room, and then the kitchen was off to the front. And then, but those were some stories from when I was younger. I have a lot more, but I'm not going to go into too many details on that because I don't want to make an ass out of myself. But I do remember. Go ahead.
Well, did you want to talk about that one time that I slept over?
You can. Go ahead.
I'm trying to think. I think we were in college already at that point.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. Stayed over at Les's house. We lived about 20 minutes apart, give or take, depending on traffic. So, like, it was late one night. We just decided to stay at his mom and dad's house. And Les was sleeping in the bed. I was sleeping on the floor. According to rumors, that's how it'll be. We weren't cuddling and spooning. I was on the floor. And it was like, middle of the night. And when I say middle of the night, we probably strolled back in at like 1 o'clock in the morning because we were probably out driving around. We were probably at Hawk Mountain or something.
We're out of the bar.
Yeah, it might have been. I'm not 100% sure on that, where we were prior. But like in the middle of the night, I just remember waking up and the tall dresser was like, my head would have been kind of up against it.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember like, because I always sleep on my side, and I remember just like looking up at the corner of it and seeing something sitting on the corner of the dresser. Like just this thing. It wasn't it wasn't the Native American stuff like Les had told me about for years that we'd talk about it and stuff like that. And, a couple times I definitely thought I saw something when I was in the room and stuff like that, like a, kind of off towards where the TV was. But I remember waking up and just looking and seeing this thing just sitting. Like the best way I can describe it is the classical definition of a goblin. That's about the best way I could describe it. And it just sat there. It wasn't doing anything. It wasn't menacing. It wasn't, it didn't induce fear, but it was just sitting there. And it kind of would like look over and just turn its head back away from me. And, at a certain point, I think I woke you up, or you woke up too. And it was just like in between us. Like it wasn't doing anything. It was just on the dresser sitting between us.
Right.
And
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
It's funny that you brought that up because that was one of the things that I was going to try to avoid talking about. But since you there were, I'm just
let it out.
There was
Russ.
there was a lot of weird things that were experienced in that house. A lot of it was apparition, typical paranormal. Some of it actually seemed, I guess, what you would consider borderline poltergeist kind of stuff. But there was also other odd things, like what you had explained. Like there was a time when I swear I saw 4 little things dancing around the one corner of the bed. I don't even want to talk about this because even though this is what our show and everything's all about, I don't want to be labeled as a crazy. That's the last thing in the world I need right now. But I don't know what it was. I don't know what they were. But it's when you said about what you saw, you're right. They're just like not even a foot tall, like goblin-y things.
Yeah, and it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't scary. Like it was.
Oh, it was scary to me. Maybe not to you, but I was a kid when I saw them. I wasn't grown like when you stayed.
Yeah, and when I get into some of my stories, I think some of the reasons why things don't necessarily induce fear in me anymore kind of will be presented in such a way. But yeah, it wasn't like a scary, like I was in fear for my life or was afraid of it. It just seemed like something observing us, like just watching over us. I mean, I want to say goblin, because again, too, this is all stuff, these are our experiences. Could some of it have been overactive imagination? Well, yes, of course. Could some of it be reasonable explanations of things that happened? Of course. But these are experiences that we kind of went through, and, to see certain things, like something that resembled a goblin. Well, if we were being interviewed for a UFO podcast, oh, you saw a gray, or you saw some kind of little alien. If you're doing paranormal, it's a goblin, it's an elemental, it's something along those lines. But it's just one of those things. Like, these are our stories. They happen to us. It could be overactive imagination, but I remember to this day, I still remember that night. Mm-hmm. There was many a times that Les and I went out, did stuff. I probably couldn't tell you. Well, I honestly couldn't tell you because we'd get in trouble for half the stuff we did. But, a lot of it doesn't really ring a bell. But that one night just always stuck with me. I think it was also like the last time I ever slept over at that house. Not because Les and I ended up moving into an apartment together. Then I think shortly after that, or around.
Yeah, and the paranormal got even worse when we moved into that place.
Yeah, so it's just one of those things. Like, it wasn't scary, but it was there.
Right.
And there was nothing on the dresser that I could have been looking at on an angle and thinking, oh, I saw something, and also my mind is, pareidolia is putting something together, and it's a goblin. There was nothing sitting there.
It was probably my Pee Wee Herman doll.
Yeah, it could have been. But no, it was just something that was there, and I don't think it had evil intentions or wanted to do anything bad. It really struck me as it was just observing, like it was just watching what was going on. Not saying that it was maybe it was something protecting you or protecting that space for a reason. I don't know. I've never saw it before that. I never saw it after that. I've never seen it in all the investigations we've done, all the places we've been. I've never seen something like that, after that. So I don't really know how to explain it any better than that. Should I get into one of my stories?
Yeah, I have some more as time goes by, as all the different places that I had moved to and whatnot. But you get on to some of your childhood stories too. Oh, and just remind me though about after the house got struck by lightning and I moved back home. I think I moved back from Virginia when I was down at Virginia Beach for a while. It was between one of the times I was somewhere.
Yeah.
Just remind me.
Okay. So growing up, I've always, until my mid 20s, have always lived in a house that you could see a cemetery from some part of the house.
Mm-hmm.
Backyard, front door, upstairs window. I've always lived in a house where you could see a cemetery. So I used to go play up the street at a couple of my friends' houses. And when I say up the street, it was a small town. Up the street was like 4 houses, and across the street, 1 house. And the street that went across there and went out further into town, that's where the cemetery was. Mm. And I'd always have to be home before dark. If I was allowed to actually go across the street, I had to be home before dark.
Yeah.
So I would come walking from my friend's house and get to the cross street, and I would look up towards the cemetery. And I'd always I would look up and I would see people. Not, 20, 30 people, but I would just see like a person or two walking out of the cemetery. Now, rational mind tells me nowadays, oh, you could have been seeing people, because people would walk through the cemetery, for health and stuff like that. They would do the loop and come out and, walk back down the street. The part of me that doesn't make sense with that, rationalization is the people weren't dressed in workout clothing. They would be dressed in suits and dresses, and they wouldn't walk normal. Some of them would walk, relatively normal. Some of them would kind of have like a hitch in their step, or like their arm would be hanging weird, and they would kind of like stagger. And I would run. I mean, I would run as fast as I could home. Now, it was a church on the corner, 2 houses, and then our house. I would clear. I mean, I probably, they should have had me run my 40-yard dash for high school football from that corner to my old house, because I probably would have set like speed records. And I would run in the door, and I'd be huffing and puffing, and my mom would look at me and be like, "What is wrong with you? Like, what's going on?" And I'd be like, Mom, I saw a zombie." And my mom would look at me and be like, "There are no such things as zombies. It's all in your head." Or you're seeing the neighbors up the road walking, from the cemetery or something like that. And I'd be like, "No, Mom, it was a zombie." And the weirdest thing about that was I had never seen a zombie movie at that point. Like, I don't even think I saw a preview for a zombie movie at this point. I'm talking, I was probably like 9 years old when this was going on, because we moved on my 13th birthday. We moved to another house that legitimately had a cemetery across the street and at one time in our yard, and another larger cemetery 3 doors up from us. But for years, my mom and my sister would always joke about, you still seeing zombies. And, my mom, she always made a joke out of it. At one point, my sister, because she had lived in the house in Minersville that we had spoke about on one of the other shows, she had kind of come to accept that there are or is the possibility of ghosts and spirits and things that we can't quite quantify yet. So she got, a little more not picking on me for it. My mom, to this day kind of would always pick on me about it. And it was funny because my mom is a very big believer in psychics. Or at least she'll actually host psychic parties at her home and stuff like that, where she'll bring in a psychic. And the one day, I decided I was going to go check it out, just kind of get an idea what this woman's whole spiel is, and to see if she's really just reading what people have said around her and using it against them later, or if she truly does have some kind of perception.
Right.
So we were sitting before the party started, and it was the psychic, my mom, my sister, and I. And the psychic looks at me and goes, and she just looks at me and she goes, "I have something to tell you." And I'm like, "Okay." And she looks at my sister and says, "I also have something to tell you." And my sister's like, "Okay, whatever." So the girl says, "Oh, you guys have a gift." And we're like, "Okay, whatever." I'm not saying I believe in psychics. I don't believe in psychics. It's very hard to sell me on the notion of it. And she looked at my mom and goes, "Are you going to tell them or am I?" And my mom's like, "I'll tell them." So we were sitting there, and my mom explains to me. She goes, "You remember when you were little and you used to see zombies at the cemetery?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you still make fun of me for it to this day." I was in my 20s at this point. She says, "Well, we have a family history of being able to do that." She goes, "It's possible that some of the zombies that you saw were spirits." And I'd already been into paranormal investigation for years at that point. And I'm like, okay, I'm not really, I don't know what I feel about that. So the lady who is the psychic looks at me and goes, "Honey, you can choose to use it or you can turn it off. But either way, if you open up, it's going to be a relatively constant process." She goes, "If you turn it off, you just maintain that level of focus on not seeing it, not hearing it, and it'll go away." And I don't know where I fall on that anymore. I have seen things I can't explain. Les and I personally saw something together that, to me, I would get on a polygraph test, and when the question would be, "Did you see a ghost?" I would answer yes. Mm-hmm. I, in my heart, believe that the response would come back as true because I have no other rational explanation for seeing it. But long story short, I'm kind of rambling here. When my mom explained our family history, my grandfather's sister was known locally. It was a small coal mine patch town where my grandfather's family lived. His entire family lived in about a 4 or 5 house little cluster. Well, when they were kids, she would be my great aunt, was known for being a psychic. And to the point where at one point somebody covered in the newspaper a story about her. And what happened was a coal miner had died, and his wife, his widow, and the children were living in a little house just down the street from my grandparents' house. And when I say my grandparents' house, my grandparents moved into that house. And now my sister lives in that house, so it's been in our family for close to 100 and some, about 100 years now. And there was a couple small houses down the street, and they were sitting at dinner. My grandfather, his sister, and their parents, my great grandparents. And up in her bedroom, the dresser drawers and the closet doors would start banging. And my great grandfather would just look at her and go, "You need to go take care of that." She goes upstairs. She comes back downstairs to the dinner table, says, "Hey, we have to go down and talk to this lady." And my grandfather's like, "Well, honey," and she was young at the time. She's like, "Honey, her husband just passed away." She's like, "Yes, I have something to tell her." So they go down, they knock on the door. The lady, of course, is crying, is upset. And she says, "Your husband wants you to know something." Now, people around there kind of knew that she had something going on where she, had these conversations with somebody or something, and also would help people out with, finding stuff. So she said, "Look in the kitchen, there's a loose floorboard." And the lady's, "Well, yeah, it's in front of the stove." My great aunt says to her, "Well, your husband told me to tell you to lift up the floorboard." So she goes over, lifts up the floorboard, and he had hidden his money that he had been saving underneath that floorboard. And it actually, helped the lady, get through the time and stuff like that. And you got to think, back then it was at a time where women didn't really have, active roles in work.
Yeah.
So it was enough money for her to kind of be comfortable and get to the point where she can move and the kids would be taken care of. But it was covered in one of the local newspapers back then. I don't know exactly which one. I've never seen a copy of it. I've just been told that. So that is the beginning of my story. I could get into the next part of that house that I lived in if you want.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So if anybody watches Dead Files, I'm sure people do. Not a terrible show. I don't know how much I believe in Amy, stuff going on with her, but there was a house in Cressona, Pennsylvania, featured probably about 4 years ago at this point. The house that was featured, when you came out the back door of our house and walked up our yard, that house, when you walked up the yard, it was the Masonic Temple was right behind us. There was an old brick house, and then the house that was featured on Dead Files is the next house over. So I grew up in that neighborhood. I would have the worst nightmares. Not about that house that was featured on the show, but the house next to it. The nightmares would always be, we were out playing, and there's a decent number of kids in the neighborhood. A lot of them, you and I went to high school with, so I'm not going to give out their names or anything like that, but we would be playing tag. The neighbors, it was the Masonic Temple, and it was a brick home, and it was the house that was on the show. The brick home, they used to let us play, like run through their backyard. They were a little old couple, very sweet people. But I'd always have this nightmare that we'd be playing tag and I'd be chasing people around the back of their house. And all of a sudden they would come running towards me and past me, and I would freeze and not be able to run, scream. And I never saw what was coming at me, but I was always terrified of that house.
Mhm.
When you go back and actually look at the history of those houses, that's actually when they say the house they lived in was a doctor's office. It wasn't. It was actually the house, the brick house I'm referring to was the doctor's office that treated patients during the Spanish flu outbreak. You know, the Spanish flu outbreak of 1918. I'm just trying to make Les laugh about something right now. Sorry, folks. But that was actually the doctor's office was the brick home next to it. And I always had terrible, I mean, it was a reoccurring nightmare. It was the same thing for years until we moved. And once we moved, I never really had a dream about it until I was 30. And it was the same group of kids. We were kids again. And we were playing tag and we're running around their house. And all of a sudden, I'm just going to use first names. George and Robin come running back at me, run right by me, and I freeze. I can't scream. And it was just like darkness coming towards me. And, that's not necessarily paranormal, but the house then years later is featured on Dead Files. The Jason part of the house that became another home is featured on Dead Files. So I grew up in that neighborhood. We always had some weird stuff happen in our house. I'd love to get my sister on. She will not come on and tell the story about the witch that lived in her closet who wanted to make me into a sweater.
What?
For some reason, this witch lived in her closet and wanted to make me into a sweater. Now, the weird thing was, her closets were those, like, 2-section doors where you open them and they fold in on themselves.
Yep.
I had her room when she moved up. She moved up into the attic. They made a room up there for her, and I took over her room. The closet doors used to rattle in the middle of the night. Like somebody was like holding them from the inside, shaking them. Not violent, like it would wake up the whole house, but just enough that like when you're you're kind of starting to go to sleep and all of a sudden they'd start shaking and you'd like look over at them and I always thought I saw something because they were those like slats going up.
Mm-hmm.
I always could see, or at least thought I could see, somebody or something on the other side of one of the panels. Not every panel, just one panel. To the point where I would like scream and cry until my stepdad would come over, open up the closet door, look in the closet, close the closet door, and be like, "Are you okay now?" "Yeah, I'm good now." But yeah, for some reason, my sister had a witch that lived in her closet, and to this day, I believe her because to this day, the story has not changed. She's still, we actually joke about the witch that lived in the closet that wanted to make me a sweater. Not sure, like, why my sister wanted me to be a sweater. I guess she never wanted a little brother, so it was kind of until we got older, and now we're best friends. But I just guess she didn't want a little brother, and that was the thing. But the way the upstairs was set up, the stairs came up the middle, and then when you came up the stairs, to the right was my mom's room, to the left was my sister's room. Then you went through my sister's room, past her closet, and the door to the attic was the bathroom, the second-story bathroom. Then there was a door in the bathroom that would lead into my room, which then had a door that led back into my mom's room. So basically, you couldn't get to the bathroom or my room without going through one of their bedrooms. And I would go to the bathroom, leave the light on in the bathroom, close the door between my room and it, and run and jump into my bed. Well, I was about 5 years old, and I had those big stuffed animal teddy bears.
Mm-hmm.
I had 2 of them. I had a brown one that was just like a generic brown teddy bear. Kind of looked like a Fozzie from the Muppets, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
Just that color brown. And I had one I called Fall Guy, after the great Lee Majors television show Fall Guy. That was a black and white bear that had red and white striped pajamas with the little pajama cap on. I always slept with him. And then the other one would always be on the floor or on my bed. Well, one night I'm running from the bathroom. I did a lot of running as a child.
Yeah.
I think I'd be in better shape, but I ran from everything as a child.
Uh-huh.
I actually had a nickname. It was chicken and the word for excrement, Chad, which is hilarious nowadays. But I was running and I jumped back into my bed, and from under my bed, the brown stuffed bear grabbed my ankle.
Oh God! It's funny that you say that, because I've got a stuffed animal story for you too. But before you go on, remind me when the show's over, I want to go back and watch, because every so often I've been watching the screen and your video panel will flash, but it'll look like a different person. Then a few minutes later, I noticed there, it just happened. It was somebody else.
Huh. I wonder if it's Bizarro World us.
I don't know.
But
I'm telling you, every now and again, it'll flash really fast, and I could see somebody else like there, but it's not. Just remind me for the playback.
Good, because I'm home alone.
Well, I'm up in the studio alone.
Yeah, well, you can run into your family. I mean, I'm like legit home alone this week. So to get back to my stuffed animal, yeah, you're cute. You're cute, Squirt.
All right, chicken shit.
That was my nickname. It's always funny when I tell my mom where we're going to and what we're going to do. She just looks at me and she goes, of all my children, my mom adopted children. She had me and my sister, and she adopted several kids. She's like, out of all my children, you are the least likely one I thought would ever get into paranormal investigation. My mom's a big fan of paranormal, and like I said, she likes, she does the psychic stuff, and she's into alternative medicines and stuff like that. So she's always been willing to kind of foster my love for this stuff in a lot of ways. So it's always been cool. But yeah, she's always just looks at me. She's like, out of all of them, you're the one that does this. She's like, the one we called Chicken Shit Chad as a child is the one who now willingly goes places to try to be scared again. So,
That's true. It's true.
When this stuffed animal grabbed my leg, now you got to realize it's one of those stuffed animals that just had like the fingers were kind of like stitched, so it didn't.
Yeah,
really
not a real hand. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just like stitched. This thing grabbed my ankle, like almost like somebody was under my bed and grabbed my ankle. Like it felt like a real grab, holding on.
It reminds me of the Poltergeist movie with the clown.
Yeah, kinda. And the weird thing is, honestly, I've probably seen about 20 minutes of the movie Poltergeist. Shocking, I know. But it grabbed my leg. Now, it didn't pull me, but it stopped my momentum.
Uh-huh.
And I kind of hit the edge of the bed and the mattress and a little bit of the frame. Mm-hmm. And like I said, my mom's room was right next door. Mm-hmm. So, of course, I scream for my mom. She gets up, she opens the door, she comes in, she throws on the light, and she's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, something grabbed my leg. And she's like, what do you mean something grabbed your leg? Now, you got to understand also, my mom at the time was a deputy sheriff. So she is like, what do you mean something grabbed your leg? I'm like, something under my bed grabbed my leg. So she kind of like looks down to make sure there isn't somebody actually under my bed. It was the 80s. If you guys, a lot of you guys remember the 80s, that's basically when we were all going to be abducted. And,
Yeah, the black van.
There was always a van with a wizard or a dragon painted on it, and they were always on the lookout for them.
Beware the black van.
Yeah, and if you see them, they're going to abduct you, and your parents will never see you again. So, of course, my mom kind of looks under the bed, and she's like, the only thing under your bed is your stuffed animal, your bear. And I'm like, well, whatever it was had a brown hand. And she pulled out the brown stuffed animal. And I'm like, well, it grabbed my leg. And she's like, no, it didn't. She's like, just go back to bed. I think I ended up sleeping in my mom's bed that night because I was so terrified. Like I would like sit there like shaking. And I think finally she, after about 2 hours of me going, Mom, can I have a drink? Mom, I'm scared. Mom, I think she finally said, just come over here.
And when you're laying in your mom's room, all you hear in your room is waka waka waka.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, bad Muppet sounds.
Yeah. Hey, Chad, come on over. Waka waka waka.
Great. Now I'm gonna have nightmares about that. Thanks.
It's the attack of Fozzie the Bear.
Yeah. A beloved children's character was the thing that frightened me probably the most.
Well, it's funny that you said about toys, though, because I remember one time I had a stuffed tiger, and it was like laying down kind of thing, and I would always put it on the top of my pillow, and like I would line the bottom of my bed with stuffed animals, and I'd line the top of the bed with stuffed animals because I thought it would like protect me, like nothing could reach up over the top and grab me. And I remember one night I was lying in bed and I heard some like a commotion at the closet. Mm-hmm. And because I remember I was just sitting there staring and I was waiting because I could hear the doors kind of rattling and I was waiting for them to pop open again. And I just remember laying there and I just like stopped myself and I was just like holding my breath, waiting. Next thing you know, I felt like something like pushed down on my pillow and I just heard purring, and I'm not bullshitting you. I heard purring and I looked up and that freaking stuffed tiger, I swear, was looking at me and the eyes were glowing.
Oh, wow.
Dude, because it had like yellow eyes and they were like shining.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was just light coming in and hit it the right way or what, but I'm telling you, I felt a depression on the pillow and purring. I mean, that's all I could tell you. And I just looked up and its head was like right there staring at me.
Oh, wow.
Freaked me out.
Yeah, I was going to say, that would have been creepy. I mean, something grabbing you from under the bed, scary, yes, but it wasn't eye-to-eye contact with this something grabbing me. Yeah, I think if I rolled over and the stuffed animal's eyes were glowing, I probably would have burnt the house down.
Oh my god, dude! I could remember just lying in bed and I could feel the covers just like inch by inch just getting pulled down, and I pulled them back up. Then I just feel it, just something pulling on the covers, and they just start sliding down, and I'd be motionless.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I don't understand why I was the one being affected by this. I shared the room with two brothers. Neither one of them had any kind of a problem. But I used to have breathing problems when I was a kid. Like I would get the croup really bad, mm-hmm. and I'd wake up unable to breathe, and I don't know. I always had the weird stuff happen to me. So I don't know if that's a contributor to it. I don't know.
Yeah, are you just more, susceptible to that type of thing. Yeah, like basically, if paranormal activity is real, not to use the horrible movie title, but if it is real, there's a percentage of Americans and worldwide that believe in this, existence of this realm just outside of ours that contains these things. And, there's a percentage of people that believe in, people having psychic ability, clairvoyance, ESP, stuff like that, power of telepathy. So there was four of you, your two brothers and your sister. 25% of them had more, several experiences. Being you, one of the four would be the 25%. So were you just more susceptible to it? You are more artistic. I said artistic, not autistic.
Yes, I was going to correct that too.
Yeah. So your mind kind of works differently, your brain and stuff like that. So did that open you up to see more stuff or experience more stuff? Yeah, it's all, without, it goes back to that, without being able to prove the existence of these things and then be able to study people who experience these things and be able to put a stat and a chemical and a reason to all this stuff. It's just questions being thrown out there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, my sister and I experienced stuff over the years. Like I said, she had the witch, and as we go on, I'm going to share a few more stories of stuff that happened, her and I, and then my nephews and stuff like that. So, is there possibly some kind of chemical reason why, certain people are more able or able when it's a good thing, that you see these things and it's interesting to you, but affects certain people, who aren't into it, who are scared by it. So it's honestly, like I said, without being able to prove all this, though, it's a, kind of throw it up against the wall and kind of question everything and see where it goes from there.
Right. Well, and that's the thing too, is like looking back on a lot of these things, it makes me think, well, is it, and I don't know if it's like my adult mind kicking in where, a lot of times children are susceptible to seeing things or are more open, if you will. And then as you get older and you learn certain things or you're made to think a certain way, I think that door or that window kind of closes and you lose kind of some of that sensitivity. You know what I mean? Because a lot of times I'll think, well, I was just a kid. It was my imagination. It was, you know what I mean? It wasn't real, because I remember the one time after a friend of mine had passed away, I think I was like 14 or 15, maybe 15. And she had died in a car accident. And I remember going to the funeral, and it was just like the worst. Because when you're that age, you don't think your friends are going to die,
No.
like that doesn't happen, And when it did, it was horrible. It was really devastating. And I remember how she was dressed when she was buried and whatnot. And I remember it was either the night of her being put in the ground or maybe a couple nights after. I remember lying in bed and the light was coming through the window and I heard the noise by the closet again. And I remember, actually I remember just feeling like something brush against my face. And it kind of felt like the material of what she was wearing. And I remember I opened my eyes and I could see the silhouette of her standing in my room. And it wasn't long. It was just, and I kind of like did like a double take and she was gone. And I don't know if it was like her just like letting me know everything was okay. I don't know, because we kind of had like an odd happening, right? Not right before she died, but few days, let's say, before she had passed away. And I don't know if it was her saying, hey, don't worry about it, we're cool, whatever. I don't know. But it was weird. And I remember when me and my brother and my friends and stuff, our friends, we would go to her grave, and we would all kind of like, she had a huge tombstone, and we'd all lay on the tombstone and stuff, like thinking about her and talking to her and stuff. And I swear it felt like it was vibrating, like it was just moving, like you could feel it. It was really weird.
Yeah, but I kind of saw something in here in the comments I thought was kind of interesting, and I just want to kind of bring something up. It's something you and I have talked about before. With the paranormal, take it all at face value of what it is. You kind of have to accept certain belief systems and whatnot. You may not have the same title for these things, or there may be a different, way of saying it, from this religion to that religion to this belief system to that belief system. But Gary had brought up something about demons, living in a world of demons. One thing Les and I had talked about before, and this is kind of a little bit off the subject, but it is paranormal related, is if you actually go back and look in paranormal history, there are, or is, a period from like the 50s into like the 60s or so, or 40s into the 60s, where there is a very high concentration of exorcisms and demonic possession cases that are brought in front of the church.
Mm-hmm.
However people feel on that subject, whatever you want to call it, I use the sense of demon, a very negative, dark, non-human entity that has never had human form. As I talk about them, I don't know if you guys can see the hair standing up on my arm. But
you need a bottle of Nair.
Thanks, Squirt. But recently, within the last, say, 10 years or so, we are experiencing another spike in reported demonic possessions. Mm-hmm. Now, can some of it be written off just using rational mind thinking, not belittling any thought processes? Some of it, yes, can be written off by mental illness. Mm-hmm. Undiagnosed mental illness, schizophrenia, stuff like that. Yes, some of it can be. I had a good conversation one time with one of my friends who's a pastor. He's a Baptist minister. He was one of my weightlifting partners. And we were talking about, paranormal and stuff like that, and Bigfoot. And I was just kind of getting his opinion on some stuff and church-related information on it. And we were talking about it, and I brought up to him, demonic possession. And, the first thing he says is a lot of cases can be written off as mental illness. Mm-hmm. Of course, that would be the easy explanation. But he was saying that they've even had a higher concentration of people submitting information, through the church and stuff like that about, possible demonic possessions or oppressions and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So I think there definitely, I think everything kind of goes in a cycle. And I do believe at times there is a higher concentration of negativity throughout the world. And I think sometimes that may lead to some of it.
Kind of like in Ghostbusters 2, like when they're talking about in New York, all the negative energy from the people created that slime kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, I agree with you too. I definitely think that, the way the world is at certain times kind of dictates the kind of energy that's emitted.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like when things are a little bit more at peace, everything's good. But like, I mean, now if you think of the way the world is now, especially our country, it's so messed up right now.
Yeah.
And there is so much hate and negativity being spewed on, both sides of the fence that it wouldn't surprise me, to say the least.
Well, you got to think about it this way. Do you remember that thing we did in probably 6th, 7th grade? That give me my headband, give me back my headband. Like it was an anti-bullying thing. What? Are you still there? Hello? Okay, can anybody hear me? Hello? Okay, sorry about that. I think now, yeah, the demons got less, I'm pretty sure. Oh, less lost power. Isn't that interesting? Coincidence. It is completely not, you know, paranormal. You know, there are storms rolling through different areas and stuff like that. I think there was a thing that I was bringing up about to Les was we did this thing in school where basically they had you hold out your arms and get mad about something, and then take your arms down, and somebody would push on your arms. Hello?
Whole fucking town lost power.
Okay, I think I'm still doing the show.
I don't know. Oh, now it's out again.
Oh.
God damn it.
Yeah, they can actually hear you, so.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think. You guys hear Les? Okay. Well, I was saying about this is a great show. I mean, I wasn't on earlier. Les is off now. We're batting 5,000 tonight. But we did this thing where they would, you get mad and they'd push down. Somebody would push down your hand would go down very quickly. Then you'd think happy thoughts and put your hand out and they'd push, and all of a sudden, it would be, you'd be normal strength and wouldn't go down. Well, you got to realize your muscles, are controlled by chemicals and electric signal. So therefore, the energy your body is emitting at any given time is going into your surroundings, your atmosphere. And therefore, you're kind of creating that situation around you. If you guys saw our poltergeist episode, or if not, you kind of, a lot of poltergeist cases are cases where is a young teen, early teen involved, and it's thought that they have a name for it. It's like the naughty teen theory, where the teen is actually emitting energy into its surroundings that is causing a physical response in our realm. So a lot of times, we're thinking demons and stuff like that. I think sometimes I do believe that there are demons out there. I don't believe that every paranormal group has an encounter with a demon. Because honestly, I know if I was a ghost and you guys came looking for me, I would mess with you. I would tell you I was, the worst thing under the sun. I'm a ghost. You know, there's nobody going to correct me if I'm the only spirit in a building. So I don't think that every case is a demonic possession or demonic oppression. I think there's a lot of negative energy in our world. I think we create a lot of it, but I do also believe there are things that feed off that negative energy. I said in the Minersville House episode about walking into that dark shadow in the hallway, and to me it snarled and it had no features to its face. I could see ears, I could see the little bit of hair on the top of its head, couldn't see its mouth, and I couldn't see its eyes, but it was in my face snarling. I don't think that's a ghost. To me, that, in my opinion, was a demon. So I'm not. I personally believe in them. I also do personally believe that there is a difference between demons and ghosts. Now, don't get me wrong. I think demons at times will use the appearance of being a ghost to manipulate situations to their advantage. That's what they do. But Les and I had a situation at the Haldeman Mansion. We were doing a walkthrough, and we're walking.
Well, first, what did I miss?
I just was running the show for a couple minutes.
Sorry about that. I'm sitting here, and the weird part is not to interrupt your conversation or your topic, but it was so weird. I'm sitting here thinking to myself, because we were talking, and I was kind of getting, in my mind as we're telling stories. I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, because we were saying about being alone, I'm like, what if the power went out? What if the power went out? The freaking power went out, dude. Like, no kidding. The whole town. Like, I looked outside and there was nothing. I could see my poor wife is in there with our 2 kids, and I could see cell phone light going through the kitchen and everything. I was like, oh God, I hope they're okay. I'm sure they'll be all right.
I hope they're okay. I'm not going to worry about checking on them. I'm just going to continue with the show.
I can kind of see movement in there. They're all right. That
right there, folks, is a true podcasting professional.
That's it. In it to win it, baby. But anyways, hello everybody. Sorry. You're in. Chad's right. This is the most effed up show I think we've had yet as far as technical difficulties. I remember when we were doing that Smile Time, we always had technical stuff, but Jesus Christ, this is the worst one yet. Oh yeah.
Yeah. I actually made a point to reference how the power went out and how it was odd, but yet coincidental.
It was weird, and it was so funny because I'm sitting here and all of a sudden, boom, the light goes out, and all my laptop was running off the battery. So I'm like, just a laptop light. And I'm looking around. I'm like, is there somebody behind me? And I was like, what happened?
Well, on my end,
she's up in the girls' room now, so they're okay.
Yeah,
but the kids are freaking out.
All I could see was it was you, but you froze, and it just like all the light went out behind you, so it was just dark, and it was just like you were lit by the computer screen, but you were froze, and then I had to check to make sure I was still on and doing the show. And I was. So then I just started talking about, continued on about, demons and stuff like that. And
if this isn't the most ironic show, talking about the paranormal, supernatural, and demonic happenings and this and that, and all this kind of crap is going on. This, kind of weird.
Yeah. But see, and that's one thing that always makes me wonder. We write off things that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Because in reality, 9 times out of 10, it is strictly coincidental.
Mm-hmm.
But do we write off things at times as coincidence that maybe aren't?
I don't know. I just think it's weird how I don't know if I can see the street lights, but I know the house lights on. I just think it's weird how, and I'm not bullshitting you either. I was sitting here thinking about the power going out, the power going out, the power going out, and all of a sudden, boom, the power goes out. Like, I don't know. I'm not saying I have any kind of telepathic powers or mind powers or anything, but that was weird.
Well, it's like I always tell my wife. She'll say something like, something just random, like, oh, it'd be terrible if that tree fell. And I always look at her like, you don't say stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, you're being foolish.
Mm-hmm.
2-3 days later, you look, the tree falls.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you say it and it's said enough times, it just all of a sudden, it randomly happens, but it's like a day or two after you say it. Or you thought it. You just don't do things like that. Like, I just don't say certain things, because my luck is I would say like, oh, I hope so-and-so breaks a leg. And then like 2 days later, they'd call me and be like, dude, I broke my leg training today. Like, oops. Hi, Shannon. It's one of my students' moms. Yeah. But
Precognition, yeah, maybe.
Now, I was, before Les came back in.
Yeah. You're getting ready to go into the Haldeman.
Yeah. Les and I are doing a walkthrough. The other 2 members of our team are down in what they consider their control room area, which I guess used to be the kitchen at one point. And Les and I are walking, and we get through one room, and there's a doorway that leads into the room next door, and there's no doors. So as we're going, we're kind of on an angle from each other, but we're both kind of just like panning through the room. I'm holding the camera, just filming little stuff, taking some stills and stuff like that.
I was slightly in front of you.
Yeah, Les is slightly in front of me, but we're the room is big enough that we both can see in this doorway. And there's a fireplace right inside the doorway. So as we're going, we both stop dead in our tracks.
Mm-hmm.
And we're both looking in the doorway. And what felt like 10 seconds, might have been 2. But Les and I both kind of meet eyes and look at each other, and we're like, did you just see what I saw? And we're both like, okay, so we both saw something. So we're kind of playing it against each other, like, I'm going to give you a little detail, you're going to give me the next detail.
Mm-hmm.
So to make sure, like, okay, we saw the same thing. We saw a little boy crouched down in the fireplace, like in front of the fireplace, who turned and looked at us as if we caught him doing something mischievous.
Mm-hmm.
And it was gone within, like I said, felt like 10 seconds. It could have been 2, but it was gone. There is the boy. The room we were looking into was a little boy's room. His name was Jacob. Jacob has been recorded on audio tapes for a couple of years now, off and on. We both saw him there, so there was nothing to be gained by us seeing him, in the sense of going back to being, demonic and demons using the form of ghosts to manipulate.
Right. Because
we didn't see him again. He didn't interact with us. We didn't record him on any of the audio that we recorded. There's no Jacobs. There's no young boys talking. So I do believe there is a difference between the two. I do believe one of the two can use the form of another of the other to manipulate.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because like I love paranormal investigators who discount religion because they want to be counterculture and oh we're so cool, we're going to debunk everybody that says anything religious. Well, the problem is if you're going to accept paranormal, you almost have to be at least understanding of religion,
Mm-hmm.
because religion does give you a lot of the details on certain paranormal aspects. Now, actually, I see EVP up in the comments. If you guys get a chance after the show, you can go on our website and check it out. We do have an EVP set from the Haldeman. It is the strangest noise.
Sounds like a mountain lion.
Yeah, it sounds like a mountain lion. As far as we know, there were no mountain lions in the area at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But it also could be somebody screaming no. It was right after we asked the question, is the little boy we saw upstairs here? And you hear, it's a couple seconds, and you hear, yeah.
Yeah, it was
I
weird.
hope you guys heard that. Yeah. But
I just posted the link to our evidence page. It's the first one in the upper left-hand corner as you scroll down. Haldeman, what does it say? Haldeman Mansion EVP or something like that.
and I think that also has a couple of the spirit box responses on it. Spirit boxes are subjective.
Very.
You can't rule them in as evidence, but you can't necessarily rule them out either. It's one of those things where I could hear something, you could hear something different. It's that stupid thing that's going around with the two names, Laurel or Yanni or whatever.
Yeah, I don't even know what that is.
I don't either. I guess it's is this dress white or is this dress blue thing, but with sound.
Oh.
So, there are some, clips in there of that stuff. And of course, like, I think it even says in there, like, you be the judge, and I'm also open to suggestions, what you hear. So, that was kind of the Haldeman experience. And
well, don't forget, we heard that we saw what we thought was this little boy, period clothing, little bowl cut suspenders and everything. Like, it was enough of a glimpse to see some detail. And then we heard what sounded like, remember, it sounded like a noise that went up to the steps up into the attic. And then we heard like what sounded like a ball rolling.
Mm-hmm.
And we were going to go up there, but there was a sign that says do not enter or something like that. And then we found out we were allowed in the attic, which kind of sucks, because if we would have known that ahead of time, we could have gone up and followed, the trail.
Yeah.
But if you don't mind me going on to another place that I lived.
Yeah.
Okay. When during one of my many back and forths between moving somewhere, then going home for a little bit, then moving somewhere and going home, I ended up buying a property. And for anybody who knows the area, don't judge me. It was a learning experience. Let's just put it that way. I bought a house, actually the first house I ever technically owned and not rented. I bought a house in Shenandoah, Pennsylvania. And give me 1 second. My throat's drying out.
Shenandoah at one time was a thriving metropolis. Not when Les lived there, but
yeah, at one time, yeah, definitely. When I lived there. Now it's turned into a shithole. But anyway, so I bought this house, and at the time I was working in Hazleton, and I didn't want to commute from Warwicksburg because it was like an hour drive. And a lot of the people that I hung out with at the time lived in that town. Great people. Don't let the town. They are great people. But anyway, there's a lot of great people in that town. It's not, I'm not saying that everybody in that town's bad. It's just the town itself is crap. But anyway, I did buy a house there, and I lived alone. It was me and my little bulldog, and that was it. And it wasn't a big. It was like, if anybody's familiar with the little patch towns or the coal towns in the area, a lot of them are basically row homes, and it's just like an entire town of connected building on each street, and they're all individual segmented into individual houses. Well, I bought this house. It was the end of a row, and it was a cute little house, really old. I think it was built in early 1900s, late 1800s, somewhere around there, around the turn of the century. And cool old woodwork and stuff like that, and neat little details. I really liked it, and it was dirt cheap. So I move in, like I said, it was me and my little bulldog, and he was a puppy at the time. And I would probably say it was maybe first week or two that I lived there. I remember I was sitting in the living room. I didn't have a washer and dryer in the house at the time. I was going down to the public, whatever you call it, laundromat. And I just got back from doing my laundry, and I had the basket sitting at the bottom of the steps, and I didn't feel like going up. So I just sat down. I turned the TV on for a little bit. I was just kind of hanging out. And I was like, maybe I'll go up, maybe not, But then I heard what sounded like, and I was remodeling the front bedroom, the master bedroom. I was kind of in the process of redoing that. I put new carpeting in, painting, redoing the molding and all that. So I was sleeping in the back bedroom, and it was the back bedroom, the bathroom, and then you would go down the hall. There was a walk-in cedar closet, the doorway to go up into the attic, and then the front bedroom. And I was sitting downstairs, and I heard, and now keep in mind, all the doors in that house were the old solid oak doors with the old skeleton key doorknobs and locks. And I heard the doorknob rattling in the front bedroom, and I always kept that door closed because I had a cat too. And I would always keep that door closed because I didn't want the cat getting in there. And I heard the doorknob rattle. And I was like, well, I got to kind of go up there anyway to put the laundry away. So I grabbed my wash basket, and the dog was acting really strange. Like, he would go to the bottom of the steps, and he was kind of hunkered down and just kind of whimpering. And then he'd walk around back behind my recliner, and he came off the other side. He's just sitting there looking up, and I had the recliner up, the footrest thing up, and he was hiding underneath that and whatnot, just acting odd. I was like, well, that's kind of weird for a little puppy to act. I was like, well, what's going on here, So then, like I said, I heard the doorknob rattle, and his name was Chopper. I was like, all right, Chopper, let's go. So I got up, and I picked up the wash basket, and I walked about maybe 4 or 5 steps up the stairwell, and the door to the cedar closet swung wide open. And I'm like, all right, that's freaky. So I go upstairs, and I am putting my laundry away, and I have the basket up against the door and my foot against the door because I'm thinking, I don't want that door closing behind me and I get stuck in some kind of weird portal in the closet or something like that.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time you've been stuck in the closet.
Oh, waka waka. But to your point of that, what we were talking about before at the Haldeman, we heard that ball rolling, and it sounded like like an old wooden ball, or like if you're playing pool, the solid pool balls would like kind of boom, and then kind of roll across the floor. Well, the one time I was sitting downstairs in the living room, and I heard like a and rolling, like a ball, like a hard ball rolling across like a hardwood floor. And it sounded like it was coming from the attic, like not from the front room or anything. It sounded like it was coming from the attic. and I couldn't explain it. I went up and I looked up there. Now the attic floor was kind of like a linoleum, but there was a carpet, like a rug, I guess, in the middle. And I had I've been in bands and all that stuff throughout my life, so I had a bunch of music equipment up there. Like every now and again, I go up there and jam and stuff like that. And there was nothing there that would roll. There was nothing, but I kept hearing it. One time I had a friend of mine come over and she was watching the dog because at the time, I mean, I lived alone. I bought a house and I was working multiple jobs and whatnot. But I was going to my part-time job after my full-time job, and she came over to let the dog out. And she's like, oh, well, I'll just hang out with him. Because like I said, he was still pretty young. He was a puppy at the time. I didn't want him cooped up all the time by himself. So she would go over and kind of hang out. And she said she was sitting downstairs watching TV. And where you were sitting downstairs, I'm telling you, it was a very small house. You could see up the steps, and the bathroom window, the light from the bathroom window, you could see kind of reflecting off of the wall at the top of the steps. Well, she said that she saw the reflection of somebody walk from the back bedroom past the bathroom doorway, and she could see the silhouette of a human-esque shape walk past the bathroom door and go up to the front door. She said she could hear the door open and close. She got freaked out. She put the puppy back in his crate and she took off. And I remember getting a text from her. She's like, yeah, I'm not coming back to the house alone. Blah, blah, blah. You know, I put the dog back. He was out to the bathroom. He's fine. I'm not going back in there. And then after I had talked to her, she explained to me what she had experienced, and I wasn't surprised. And I remember when I was remodeling the front bedroom, I was sleeping in the back bedroom. And I remember, and at the time, I only had a little twin size bed in the back room that was like just a spare bed that I had for anybody who wanted to crash. And I was sleeping on it at the time, and I had a chair in the corner of the room. And I remember I never felt comfortable back there. And I would always sleep kind of in the fetal position on my side with my back against the wall facing the doorway, because I always felt like something was going to come into the room. Now, at the time, I think I was 27 when I bought that house. And I mean, I was a grown man. And like I said, I'm 6'3". I'm a big guy. I played football. I lifted weights all throughout my life and everything. So I'm not weak, I guess you could say. And I was terrified of that room. I actually slept with like a light on, like a night light kind of thing. I couldn't stay in the dark in there, because the one night I was laying there, I was kind of in the fetal position sleeping, and I felt somebody sit on the bed. Like I remember laying there, I could feel the bed move, and it was like a depression in front of me, and I could feel it. And then I could just hear like somebody like breathing. All I could hear is like, just like a hard breathing, not like a real creepy, like pervy breathing, but just like somebody sat down and they were breathing. And I would hear the breathing. I could hear like the chair in the corner of the room. I would be sleeping at night and I would hear breathing coming from the chair. And like I said,
I'm sorry, Les. I used to sneak into your old house and sit in that chair and just watch you sleep. I went to make sure you were okay.
Yeah, right. But it was very weird, and people that would stay over, you know, they would have weird experiences too, and they'd never want to come back. So it kind of worked in my favor sometimes.
I don't think that's what made him never want to come back. Good one, Squirt. Spit that water out.
Yeah, I almost squirted on that one. But yeah, like I said, I very strange. And all throughout my life, everywhere I lived, my childhood home, when Chad and I lived together throughout college at the Minersville house, we had the one show about that. Weird things happen there. Weird things happen at my childhood house. I was working for a company, and it was at the time in right out Elverson, PA. And I was living in Ephrata, which is outside of Lancaster, in a big old apartment building. And I remember the one night I was lying in bed, and I love historical pieces. Like I love antiques and stuff like that. I had this really big, awesome kind of wardrobe that I had in that apartment because there wasn't a lot of closet space. And it was an old antique piece and whatnot. So I don't know the true history of it, but it had, it was old. So I would imagine there was some history to it. I don't know if it was some sort of spectral attachment or what, or if it had belonged to a little girl, but I can remember the one night I was lying in bed and I could kind of hear like a click, 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 like the heels of shoes tapping up against wood. And I just remember, just because there was a window that would face my bed from the opposite side of the room, and there was a street light right outside of that, so it would always have light blasting in my face. And I remember kind of like looking up and just kind of like putting my hand up, and I was looking, and I swear I saw a young girl sitting on top of the wardrobe, clicking her heels off the side of the dresser. And like with most of the situations that or experiences I had, it was very brief. It was I saw it, and right when I could make out what it was gone. And that, from what I can remember, like I used to hear things, but then again, it was a multi-unit apartment building, so it could have been any one of the multiple different apartments, but it would sound like things were moving around, sound like things, I would just hear things. But I would always, like I said, I would always write it off as, oh, well, it's just the neighbors or this or that. But that was the only thing from that apartment that I remember that was really freaky. And I remember on the far end of Ephrata, there was an old insane asylum. And it was the creepiest freaking thing. And I can always remember driving home from work, passing it, thinking I got to get in there because it was posted and whatnot, private property. But I wanted to break in just to check it out and do a little bit of investigating on my own. And I never did. And I think now they turned part of it into a Comfort Inn or a Holiday Inn, which we should probably stay there one time just for the shits of it and do an investigation. And I know it was part of the old asylum buildings, but yeah. So like I said, everywhere I had lived, up in the Shenandoah house, I experienced things, and I'm trying to recall some of the other stuff that happened there. And it's escaping me right now. It was just lots and lots of weird things.
Well, it's kind of funny. You brought up the whole chair in the room thing. My stepmother had a porcelain doll that sat in a chair.
I hate those things.
And the way my dad and stepmother's house was you walked in and there was a little like partition wall that went about maybe 3 foot into the room, kind of giving you a little like space to take off your shoes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then you would look to your right and that was the living room, but my dad had cut out the one piece of wall that used to be there to kind of give you a completely open. So it was like open from the living room to the dining room. And then it was a wall with a doorway into the kitchen. And then when you came through the living room to the left was a stairwell. Well, this doll used to sit on this old doll rocking chair right next to the steps. Next to the computer desk. We were one of those lucky families back in the 80s to have computers in the house. And we had a big computer desk and it sat right next to it. Not quite like the Annabelle doll. The real Annabelle's a Raggedy Ann doll.
Yeah, which is not scary at all.
The movie Annabelle doll, kind of along the same lines, but an older doll, like a real actual like old doll. And it would sit in this chair. Now, I have my sister, who's my blood sister. Then I have a stepbrother and stepsister, who are my stepmother's children. My sister and my stepbrother are less than a year apart in age. Then my stepsister and I are almost 9 months apart. So there's four of us. My parents went out. My dad and my stepmom went out to eat. We were home. The oldest ones, they were probably about 15, maybe 16-ish. So on down the line to me, I'm the youngest of that group. And we were sitting there, and my parents always bought those L couches, like those that are hooked together,
Mm-hmm.
those sectionals or whatever they're called, I guess.
Yeah.
They always bought those for that living room because that's the only thing that ever really made sense in there. So all four of us are sitting like next to each other on it, watching the TV, which was towards the front of the house. And the rooms were all carpeted, but we heard the rocking chair start moving. And we heard it kind of like tick off the wall behind it a little bit. And it just kept, so like one at a time, we all just kind of like peek our head over the sectional couch and we're looking, and the thing is moving. And the doll was facing towards us when we looked at it. So it kind of looked like it was moving, like it was like animated in a way, like it had like its face was movable. And it just kind of sat there and looked at us and just sat there and rocked.
Oh God.
we for years would hide that doll in the closet. We would take it upstairs and hide it in the back of the closet. My stepmother would get pissed off, find it, and put it back. I don't know whatever happened to that doll. It's probably still sitting there. But yeah, that's
probably in your bedroom closet right now, waiting for you.
You know what, Squirt? I've had enough of you trying to scare me.
Good times.
I almost went into a Coach Kentner rant there for a minute.
Horseshit.
That's horseshit, Squirt. But actually, my grandmother, when she died, left me a whole bunch of weird rabbit doll things. They're like princesses, but they're rabbits.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
I don't know why she left them for me to have. I guess my sister probably didn't want them, and she said, "Oh, Nana left you these." They're all actually in the Miners' little house in the closet. I hope they're all still there, not like walking around the house on their own.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because my sister used to have. I don't know where the hell she got them. I don't know if my mom got them for her or one of my grandparents, but she had a bunch of shelves in her room, and they were filled with those porcelain dolls. And that was right around the time that movie. Remember back in the 80s, Dolls, the movie Dolls, where it was like people would come upon this old haunted house or abandoned house or what looked like an abandoned house, and if they were good people, they were able to leave. But if they were bad people, they were turned into these dolls, and they stayed in the house. And creepy as shit. I remember that used to freak me out every time I would go in my sister's room because I was like, I wonder if you smash their heads open, if there's dead people inside and stuff. That, and she had a doll named Corky, which was like a spitting image of Chucky from Child's Play.
Oh, do you remember the My Little Buddy dolls?
My Buddy, yeah, but Corky talked. Just like Chucky. Like he had you could put the thing in it, like the tape in his back, and kind of like Teddy Ruxpin, where you would put the tape in the back, but that's how Corky was too. And he would sing songs and talk and this and that. And I remember I think my pop-up got it for her. And I just remember staring at that thing like, why it's going to kill us all.
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of dolls. I'm not afraid of them. Like I take them or leave them. I'm just not a big fan of like people that have them in their homes and stuff like that. Like, I have this doll that was, from the 1920s, and it belonged to a little girl who, her father bought it for her and then was hit by a bus on the way home with it or something. I don't like those things. Like, I could do without the scary doll stories at times. I did enjoy the Annabelle movie, the original one and stuff like that. I don't recall seeing the second one yet, but
I don't know if I watched any of them. They all looked freaking dumb to me. I did like The Conjuring though. I think they were kind of linked, weren't they?
Yeah, they're all together. It's all the Warrens.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm trying to think what other stories. I think we covered them all. Do you have any more?
Uh,
I mean, I know there. Oh, I remember we're talking about the. I said, remind me about the old house.
yes.
One of the times, like I would always move away. Then when I would come back home, I'd stay at my mom and dad split up, but it was then my mom's house. So I'd come home and stay with my mom, and then I'd find an apartment or a house or something, and I'd move out again. But one of my in betweens, I want to say I was 20 something, and I was in my sister's room. Well, what was my sister's room? She wasn't living there at the time. I don't think she was living there. Or maybe she was in the downstairs bedroom. I can't remember. But anyway, I was in what was my sister's room because I remember the purple carpeting and purple walls and everything. It was different. But I remember I was laying in bed, and the room behind that room was where my mom was sleeping, and that was me and my brother's old room, what we would call the haunted room. And I remember it was the middle of the night. I was laying in bed, and again, like one of her closets where that kind of fold open, they fold in half, closets. And I was laying there, and I heard, something moving around in the closet, and we had all those like metal wire coat hangers or hangers, you know what I mean? And you could hear like as if almost like you would like kind of brush your hand past them. It was kind of like that ting, 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 ting. And I remember I was like, what the hell is that noise? Then I would kind of hear it clink, 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 clink. I was like, oh my God, it's coming from the closet. And I remember I just kind of lifted my head up and I looked down, and the freaking closet door popped open. I remember I banged on the wall behind me. I was like, Mom! And I was in my 20s, and my mom's this tiny, skinny little lady. She's like, what's the matter? Like, there's something in my closet. Oh, she's like, go back to bed. I'm like, what? Check it out. Oh, it was funny, but it freaked me out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you're just laying there and you hear something moving. You hear the coat rack or the hangers clicking together, and the freaking door pops open. I was like, screw this, and I have to go past the closet to get out of the room.
Yeah, again, I can make many closet jokes with you, but I'm not going to.
Trying to lure back in.
Yeah. So, my little brother asked a question.
Aaron.
Yeah, Aaron's
I
watching.
thought that was him. Hey, buddy.
What do you think about bad events happening in a place that leaves a negative residual spiritual energy? Aaron, I would say, what is it, about 10 minutes from where you go to school? I would definitely say from the one time I was there had very bad happenings and definitely left some negative residual spiritual energy there. So yeah, I mean, I think.
Are you talking about the old house?
No. Aaron's in college.
Oh.
Yeah, Aaron's in his second year, just finished his second year not that
Where's
long
he going
ago.
to school at?
In Valley Forge.
Oh.
Yeah,
cool. Well, congratulations.
Yeah. But I would definitely say, yeah, I think negative, residual spiritual energy. I think if enough trauma happens somewhere, I would say yes, that there's going to be something left over.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily always negative, because to me, I spend a lot of time on Civil War battlefields. I work on a Civil War battlefield, not in an official capacity with the Park Service or anything like that, but I work in a city that was a Civil War battlefield.
Right.
The entire city at one point was under siege and, was used, as a quartermaster corps for the Confederate Army. So not all bad events necessarily leave negative energy, but they definitely do leave some energy. There's definitely something left over. Not always negative. I think sometimes, especially with like Civil War type stuff or war related paranormal happenings, it's more the sense of a lot of times they don't necessarily know they're dead. That's because John went to Auschwitz. Yeah, I know a few people that have went to Auschwitz also. I don't know. Sometimes we have a preconceived notion of certain things, certain places. And I think sometimes that maybe affects how we respond in those places or what we feel in those places. But I would definitely say a place like Auschwitz. I actually have some friends, Twitter friends, who have shot video in a couple of the different concentration camp locations. Not necessarily paranormal videos, but just they're a paranormal group, but they do a lot of interesting video shoots and stuff like that. And they have went to Auschwitz and a few other ones. And I think it's that sense of awe, like Les and I have talked about before, like going to Gettysburg, you have that sense of awe. And if you sit long enough in certain places there, you have the overwhelming emotions. Mm-hmm. At least I do.
No, I agree.
So
there's something about that area that's very, I don't know.
Yeah, I would definitely say those areas, there is is it psychological? Possibly. Is it spiritual? Possibly. I've also been to areas that should be highly charged spiritual, energy type areas where there was massive casualties and stuff like that and felt absolutely nothing. Mm-hmm. I've also went to Appomattox, was standing over a grave, playing with some stuff equipment wise, and a piece of the equipment actually said Aaron's name. Aaron shortly thereafter got a phone call from me. He doesn't know the whole purpose of the phone call was me calling to make sure he was okay. Mm-hmm. Random, it says Aaron. And I'm like, why would it say Aaron? So I've picked up my phone. I'm sending him messages. I'm like, hey, how you doing? Are you, what's going on? How's school? Getting the whole rundown. And it was just a random standing over. There's a single grave at the Appomattox battlefield that kind of has a creepy tree that sits above it. And it was a soldier who actually didn't die there. His family's farm was there. He had died earlier in the war and was buried there, and it was on the battlefield now. Mm-hmm. But so it was one of the times that I was out somewhere and got a message to reach out to somebody else. But I've been a lot of places. I've been to a lot of hospitals, churches, stuff like that. There's definitely different energies when you go certain places that you definitely feel, a certain way about certain things. We've went to the orphanage twice to investigate. I've had, leading up to the investigations at the orphanage, I've had a lot of interactions where I felt like it was children trying to trying to interact with me. I was sitting in church the Sunday before. I think we investigated on a Friday, so it was the Sunday before, and we were just sitting there, and I felt like somebody grabbing my hand like this, tugging on my hand throughout the sermon. I've had, days leading up to it, like low on my shirt, tugging, like on the back of my shirt, somebody tugging on it.
Yeah.
Stuff like that in town. There especially, I've had some weird things happen, stuff I could probably write off with some, rational thought, but,
Right.
Strange nonetheless when you're actively seeking out these things.
Yeah, it's a good thought. And I think that's kind of what I was saying before is as we get older, we try and write things off to avoid or to trick ourselves into thinking that it's not paranormal. You know what I mean? Like, oh, there's got to be a rational explanation. It's not a ghost. It's not this. It's not that,
Well, I think there's a stigma attached to these things.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're a kid, your family tells you it's your imagination. My mom told me for years, oh, it's all in your head.
Mm-hmm.
And then she relays a story years later. So I think as you get older, I think without a forum like the forum that we have here, I think people are afraid to talk about stuff.
Yeah.
Because professionally, I don't want, my boss to look at me like I'm goofy or crazy or nuts.
Well, look at the beginning of the show when I was starting. Like there's a lot more stories that I have from my childhood home that I don't know if I want to talk about because I have a business of my own. I have clients that I have to deal with, and if they happen upon this show, I don't want them. I don't want the reputation I've built with them to be tarnished because I talk about things I've experienced or, you know what I mean? Or think I've experienced, and I don't know. I mean, we're so far deep with our investigative group and our show now that it's kind of too little too late, but, but you know what I mean? Like that's the perfect point is I'm like, I don't know what I want to say because now I am on a public forum and do I want to say everything? You know what I mean? Because everybody knows Facebook, social media, you get eaten alive.
Yeah.
And especially on the groups that are supposed to be like-minded, you say one thing and those people tear you to frick apart, whether it be paranormal, Bigfoot, Dogman, you try and join the groups to learn more or to contribute. And if it isn't, parallel to somebody else's ideals, you're the worst thing in the world.
Yeah.
So it is. It's I would agree that I think a lot of it is you suppress it because you don't want people to think any, a certain way about you.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing, like, for everybody who's watching yet and stuff like that or listens to this later, I don't judge anybody on their belief, whether it be, cryptozoology or paranormal, religion, stuff like that. Because I think that's what makes my research better is to get other points of view on things. Not just to look at it and say, oh, well, if you're going to watch Xplorers or be on our Facebook page, you have to agree lockstep with what we say. Yeah. No, we don't have the answers. If we had the answers, we'd be writing books and be doing television shows.
Yeah,
and, we enjoy doing this. We enjoy learning from you guys, having a chance to talk, listening to other people's experiences.
That's the whole point is we're trying to seek the truth. We don't know for sure on everything. I mean, we know a lot about a lot of things, but you know what I mean? We don't know it all.
Yeah. So. I mean, I know a lot about history. I know a lot about researching history. So a lot of times with location, especially like paranormal, even in the cryptozoology end of it, I love learning more history about places, about events. I love learning people's history because, we're not all, we're lucky enough, Les and I are lucky enough to be friends with Andy, who has written a book.
Yeah.
I will probably never write a book. I've sat down and started to write one once. I got about 2 pages into it, and that's as far as I've gotten. That was 4 years ago.
Yeah. I started writing a book, but it was a comedy. It wasn't about paranormal. It was a comedy fiction.
Yeah. I mean, I started writing a book on paranormal, just some of the stuff that we talk about on the show, just kind of writing it out. And I got like one story into it, and it was about 3 pages, and I've never touched it since. So, this is a chance for everybody to kind of like be with other people who don't judge them for their beliefs. And that's one thing I do ask, like, especially like when we do talk and there's comments and stuff like that, or some, people post on our page. If you have a point to debate that is based off of history, some pseudoscience, theory, stuff like that, please have a rational adult debate. If you're going to debate the existence of, a specific religion or, ideology, that's nobody ever wins those conversations, because we all do kind of have different life experiences, different thoughts on why things happen. But, here, that's one of the things with the show and stuff like that, is to kind of have the sharing of stuff. We don't have all the answers. We like to hear from you guys. We like to kind of work with people, meet new people, because we travel. Les and I will travel a good bit throughout the course of a year. If there's something in your town and we're you tell us about it and we're going to be in that area, we're going to come. We're going to go see it. We're going to hey, we're in your neighborhood. Take us to this place.
Yeah. Well, it's like we always say, contact us on our through Facebook, PM us, or go to our website. We have a way to be contacted, or email us at encounters@explorersgroup.com. I mean, we're always open to help, and we've done a lot of investigations. I mean,
yeah, and we've read a lot. We've we've been in contact with not just people that we've interviewed so far, but with other people who have more knowledge or have more resources to be able to do more stuff or help people out better. I saw a comment up on the thing about history needing to be rewritten. I agree with that. I think history has to be taught in a sense of we teach history. We don't teach theology, or not theology. We teach history, not ideology. We're open and honest about things. We teach not from a point of view. We teach what happened, why people on this side believe this, why people on that side believe that. So I do believe a lot of times history does need to be reworked in a sense, just because there's a lot of things that we were told growing up about history that when you start reading the people's biographies or their diaries that were involved in these historical points, you start to realize this is somebody's opinion of what was going on, and that's what we were taught as history. We're not taught this is the actual words of Abraham Lincoln, or we're taught a speech. We're taught the Gettysburg Address a lot of times in school, but we're not taught what Lincoln's plans were after the war. what his goals were by doing certain things during the war. And I always go back to the Civil War because that's where my knowledge base really kicks in on history. So, that's one of those things. There are a ton of lies that were told in history, honestly. A lot of things were told, causes and effects and stuff like that have been lies over the years. But, that is what it is. I think as, researchers, be it in history, paranormal, cryptozoology, just an interested person in a subject matter, it's our responsibility to kind of enlighten people, not be obnoxious, but enlighten people. When you have a chance, like I spoke at a World War II event last year sometime. It was very interesting. And then I got to speak with a living veteran of World War II, and I got so much more information from him. And it was funny because things I was bringing up, people didn't know that were at this event. And he actually came up to me afterwards and he's like, wow, you have a good grasp in what was really going on. And I explained that both my grandfathers, one had fought in Europe, one had fought in the Pacific. So I had a lot of firsthand stories passed down from them.
Right.
So, yeah, I definitely think it's our, sometimes it's our responsibility to kind of give people some of the truths that are out there that aren't being taught, especially if you're a parent. I'm actually kind of a big believer in homeschooling because I can teach a child history for the sake of history, not a political agenda or an ideology. I can teach them what was going on.
Yeah.
So, it is going on 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time.
I still have work I got to get done from one of my clients, and I'm getting tired.
Yeah, I got to get up at 4 a.m.
Yeah, that's true.
So, do you want to go through I'll do it. I can do this.
No, I got to bring it up.
Well, I'll start. You just bring it up as we go.
Ready?
Yes. Go. You can reach us at explorersgroup.com or at explorersgroup on Twitter or Facebook.com/explorersgroup.
There you go. Yeah, and like we always say, we're on iTunes, we're on Instagram, all that stuff. I just want to say thank you to everybody because 213 comments so far on this show's chain. This cluster F of a show generated the most comments and back and forths. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you for bearing with us and dealing with the technical difficulties, the power outages and whatnot.
Rebooting computers.
It was a great show. And this show is dedicated, like we said, to personal experiences Chad and I had. And for anybody listening from a paranormal group on Facebook, just know that our show is if you're new to the show, our show is every Thursday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Our topics vary. We're paranormal investigators. We're also cryptozoological investigators. All things strange, whether it be extraterrestrial, UFO, ghosts. We look into everything. We get reports from all over. We're involved with other groups. Keystone Bigfoot Project, which was formerly the PA Bigfoot Society. We're linked to a lot of different groups. We try and do as much as we can to help everybody or anybody who needs it. I'm getting tired and I'm rambling. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Bottom line, don't be afraid to reach out to us. We won't judge. Go to our Facebook page, PM us, go to our website, like Chad said, explorersgroup.com. We have a contact page there, or encounters@explorersgroup. You could email us. I think next week we're going to be talking about UFOs or something extraterrestrial. unless you guys want to hear something else, send us a message and give us a topic. That would be really cool. So on that note, Chad, as always, brother, thank you for being a friend.
Travel down the road and back again.
Your heart is all right. We can't do this anymore. Okay. Anyways, good night, everybody. Good night, Chad.
Good night, folks. Thanks for watching.